They called her Vermin and threw her into the trash. No one thought a human would love her. The alley in Sector 9 looked like the city's forgotten vein, narrow, gray, and wet from the last mist cycle. The disinfectant drains gurgled quietly, pushing chemical runoff toward the sea far below. A sour metallic smell lingered in the air. Overhead, strips of cold white light flickered against the chrome walls, giving everything a sterile, indifferent glow. Naira sat near the drain, hugging her knees. Her skin, deep teal with faint reflections like glass, caught the light in sharp angles. Damp hair clung to her face and neck. She had stopped trying to brush it away hours ago. Her job had ended 3 shifts earlier when the maintenance sector laid off non-citizens first. Since then, she had stayed close to the vent outlet for warmth, pretending it was temporary. The city didn't allow sleeping on the glass walks. This alley was her last quiet space before security sweeps came through. When the cleaner bot bumped the waste container, the world turned cruelly familiar. Trash spilled, wrappers clung to her bare feet. A group of day shifters and teenagers paused to watch. It started as laughter, the kind that covers boredom, and grew louder when she didn't react. "Hey, Vermin," one shouted. "Careful, she bites," another said, tossing a food tray. It hit her shoulder and slid down. Naira froze, every muscle tightening. Stillness made her smaller. The less she moved, the faster they lost interest. It had worked before, but this time, someone pulled out a camera pad. The minute could spread, another nameless alien in a gutter. Her throat burned. She couldn't tell if it was from humiliation or the mist residue. Up on the catwalk, Tyler Vale stopped mid-inspection. He was in his late 30s, lean, with his swimmer's shoulders and the calm stance of someone who'd learned to make decisions fast. He worked as a structural safety auditor for the glasswalks, a job that required precision and patience. Before that, he had served in the Civic Rescue Corps, the Underwater Recovery Division. He had spent years saving lives no one remembered afterward. Tyler's current mission was to inspect the service drains for backflow hazards after a vent malfunction report. He was logging pressure levels when the sound below, the laughter, the word vermin, broke his focus. He looked down. The scene below wasn't dramatic. Just a woman in rags, drenched and still, while others treated her like she didn't exist. He hesitated for a second. Protocol said not to interfere unless a threat existed. But he'd seen enough rescues begin the same way. Cruelty that escalated because no one stopped it early. He set his inspection slate down and descended the service ladder. The kids noticed him halfway down. He moved without haste, his boots landing in shallow puddles. His jacket, black, matte, with a small civic insignia on the collar, marked him as a worker, not an enforcer. That was enough to quiet them for a moment. "Cycle purge in 3 minutes," he said flatly. "Clear the area if you don't like acid mist." A few backed off, uncertain. One boy scoffed. "Who are you, Mr. Safety?" "Exactly that," Tyler replied, voice calm but firm. "Now move." He walked past them and crouched near Naira. "Stand up if you can." She looked up slowly. Her eyes were pale green, tired but sharp. "They're not finished. They are now." He took off his jacket and set it across her shoulders, then offered his hand. She didn't take it at first. He waited. When she finally did, her palm felt cold and slick from a mist. "Can you walk?" he asked. "I can. I just don't have anywhere to go." "You do for now." A few of the teens still hovered at the alley's edge. One of them sneered. "She stinks, man. You'll catch it." Tyler turned toward him. Then the sanitation system failed, not her. His voice carried enough authority that even the ones laughing stopped. The boy lowered his head and kicked a wrapper toward the drain. Tyler guided Naira out of the alley. The mist valves released behind them with a hiss, a delayed flush. Chemical steam filled the space they'd just left. She flinched at the sound. He didn't touch her again, but stayed close enough that her small frame stayed inside his shadow. She's trembling. Part cold, part fear, he thought. If I leave her here, she'll come back to the same spot by nightfall. The Skyflat complex wasn't far. His work quarters sat 3 levels above the service decks, a temporary housing unit meant for inspectors. It wasn't built for guests. As they entered the stairwell, she kept glancing back. Every clang of metal made her jump. "You're safe here," he said, keeping his tone neutral. "Nobody comes up these stairs unless something's broken." "You sound sure of that." "It's my job to be sure of things." Inside his flat, everything was neat. Labeled drawers, folded towels, and a soft hum from the air purifier. The scent of citrus detergent replaced the alley stench. Tyler pointed toward the shower. "Hot water, 15 liters before cool down. There's soap that won't burn your skin. Use as much as you need." She hovered near the doorway. "You trust me alone in your place?" He met her eyes. "You don't look like you've got the energy to rob me." That earned a small, almost nervous laugh. "Fair point." He handed her a clean Tide wrap from a cabinet and stepped out of the room. Behind a frosted panel, water began to run. The steady rhythm filled the silence. Tyler sat at the small kitchen counter, eyes on the vent inspection data scrolling across his slate. But his thoughts drifted. He remembered the rescue days, bodies pulled from flooded corridors, the way people froze before drowning, the way stillness could mean either calm or surrender. The look Naira had when he found her was the same one he'd seen too many times. When she finally stepped out, wrapped in white, her skin clean and faintly glowing under the lights, she looked like someone waking from shock. Her freckles shimmered faintly along her collarbones, faint pulses of soft light. "The smell's gone," she said quietly. "Feels like the city doesn't recognize me now." Tyler poured her a cup of Furlan-seed coffee and slid it across the counter. "Let's keep it that way." She took a sip, wincing at the heat. "Why help me? You could have walked away." He leaned against the counter. "Because no one else did." Silence settled. The air felt warmer now, less sterile. Then the door chimed, 2 short tones. Tyler's body tensed instantly. He checked the panel. "Civic hygiene officers. Routine inspection. Stay behind the wall," he said quietly. She did, holding her breath. He opened the door, greeted them with practiced professionalism. "Safety Auditor Vale, Code 17C. I'm filing a vent failure report for Sector 9. Temporary care guest is under review." The younger officer looked curious, the older one just tired. They scanned the report. Everything matched. No reason to push further. "Be sure she's logged under temporary shelter protocol," the older officer said. "Already done." When they left, Tyler locked the door and let his shoulders drop. Naira exhaled in relief. "They always find me," she said, half to herself. "Not tonight," he said. "Eat something before you crash. You'll need strength." She looked at him again, studying his expression, cautious, reserved but not cold. "You talk like a man who expects everyone to leave." He didn't answer. He didn't need to. Outside, the turquoise sea shimmered under the city lights. The hum of Irisa Crown never stopped, even in the forgotten corners where people like Naira fell through. Inside a clean, narrow room, 2 strangers shared silence. One rebuilding a sense of control, the other deciding if compassion was worth the cost. It wasn't romance yet. It wasn't rescue either. It was the first moment in months when both of them felt seen. Morning settled over Irisa Crown with a sterile brightness that seeped through every window. The mist cycle had ended hours ago, leaving the city clean and distant again, like the night before hadn't happened. From Tyler's narrow sky flat, the sea looked smooth and unreal, the color of cold glass. Naira sat at the edge of the sleeping cot, half wrapped in the fresh Tide cloth he'd given her. Her damp hair fell in dark green waves down her back, dripping onto the floor. The jacket he'd lent her hung on a chair, still stained from the alley. She stared at it quietly, like she wasn't sure if she had the right to touch it again. Tyler poured boiling water into 2 steel cups and stirred in the Furlan-seed powder. The air filled with a nutty, roasted scent that cut through the antiseptic air. He didn't ask if she wanted any. He handed her 1 cup and watched her reaction. She took it in both hands, eyes flicking to the steam. "You really drink this every morning?" "Every shift start," he said. "Keeps the pulse steady during inspections." Inspections. She tried the word as if testing how it sounded in her mouth. "That's why you were in the alley." He nodded. Routine safety sweep. The vent system failed again. The mist came out hot and unfiltered. That's why it burned my skin, she said, glancing at the faint red marks along her arm. I thought it was me. He looked at her then, sharply enough that she turned away. Never assume that again. There was a pause, heavy but not uncomfortable. He sat across from her, sipping his coffee, eyes fixed on the sunlight bending through the window glass. Who runs the sector? She asked finally. Who's supposed to fix the vents? Civic board contracts. Lowest bidder every quarter. He said it like an engineer giving a weather report. Tired, factual beyond anger. They don't come down to that level. I do. So you fix things for people who don't care if it stays broken. I fix things because they should work, he said simply. She gave a small smile at that, but it faded quickly. You're not married, are you? He shook his head. No time. No interest. I figured, she said, taking another sip. You keep everything too clean. Married people leave messes. He glanced at her cup. Fingerprints on steel. A small ring of coffee on the table. Maybe I needed one. Her eyes lingered on him for a moment too long. Then she looked down. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was cautious, like both were still testing where the boundaries were. She cleared her throat. I used to work in Vent Sector 6. Cleaning crew. That's 2 sectors north, he said. What happened? They downsized. Said hybrid labor wasn't efficient. Tyler frowned. That legal? She shrugged. Doesn't matter. No one checks. Someone should. She gave a dry laugh. That someone's not you. Why not? She looked at him like he was joking. When he didn't smile, her tone softened. Because the moment you file a complaint about a hybrid, you get a reputation. The kind no one wants. I've seen it. He didn't respond. His expression stayed calm, but a thought lingered in his mind. She's right. His position gave him authority, but not power. One report could get flagged, questioned, or quietly deleted. He'd seen that happen too. The hum of the purifier filled the gap between them. Outside, transport drones crossed the air lanes like silver insects. For a moment, the scene almost felt normal. 2 people having breakfast after a long shift. But the air was still too careful. He broke it. You said you had nowhere to go. That's still true. Naira hesitated. There's a halfway block in the old sector. They take people for a few nights. Unsafe, he said quickly. I've stayed there before and ended up in that alley. That landed. She looked down at her cup, thumb tracing the rim. You don't even know me. I know what it looks like when someone stops expecting help, he said. You don't have to stay, but if you walk out, they'll see you the same way as yesterday. Her jaw tightened. And if I stay, then we'll figure something that isn't charity. She searched his face for any trace of pity and found none. That seemed to settle it. She nodded once, slowly. One day, she said, then I'll leave. Fine. They both knew she wouldn't. Neither said it. Tyler stood and went to the storage unit by the wall. He pulled out a folded gray shirt and a pair of old field trousers, both several sizes too big. These are clean. You can keep them. I'll wash them before I give them back. He looked at her. If you want to repay me, help me replace the vent cap in that alley. It's part of my route anyway. Her head lifted. You want me to go back there? Yes. People saw you broken. Let them see you standing. Her lips parted, startled. Not by what he said, but by the bluntness of it. For a moment, her hands tightened around the cup. You think that matters? I think you'll sleep better if you find out, he said. She didn't answer, but she didn't say no either. By midday, they walked back toward the lower decks. Naira wore his oversized shirt tied at the waist, her tide wrap underneath. Her hair was half dry, glowing faintly green in the light that filtered through the transparent panels. Tyler carried a small toolkit and a new vent cap wrapped in cloth. The same alley looked smaller now, quieter. The kids were gone, replaced by the low hiss of leaking mist. Naira stopped at the entrance, arms crossed. Her pulse jumped even though nothing moved. Tyler crouched by the vent casing, checking the bolts. Still think it's just you they wanted to laugh at. She didn't answer right away. I think they didn't care who it was. Exactly. He twisted the old cap loose and pulled it free. Steam burst out, hot but brief. She flinched back. He barely blinked. You're not scared of anything, she said quietly. He smiled faintly, tightening the new part in place. I'm scared of wasting time. That's all. She stepped closer, watching how methodical his movements were. There was nothing showy about him. Everything he did looked practiced, economical, like every action had been drilled into muscle memory. When he finished, he stood and wiped his hands. Done. This won't dump acid on anyone again. Until it breaks next week, she said. Then I'll fix it again. She gave him a small, tired smile. You sound like someone who keeps fighting a flood with a spoon. He met her eyes. Then it's a good spoon. That made her laugh for the first time. A quick, real sound that broke the tension in the air. They stood in the alley a little longer, watching the vent hum back to life, clean and even. The smell of chemical brine faded. For the first time, the place felt neutral, not hostile. Tyler looked at her. You should eat something. You'll crash before sundown. Do you always tell people what to do? Only when I'm right. She exhaled through a half smile and followed him out of the alley. Behind them, the mist cycle reset, the air hissing clean again. But this time, Naira didn't look back. She had seen the place burn her once. Now she'd seen it fixed. And maybe, she thought, that counted as a start. As they walked toward the upper decks, a question formed in her mind that she didn't ask yet. Why does a man like him live alone, fixing things no one thanks him for? Tyler, beside her, was thinking almost the same thing. What kind of life leaves a person waiting in a drain for someone else to decide they matter? Neither asked the other. The silence between them was heavy, but alive, the kind that meant something was beginning. The lift ride back to the upper decks was silent, except for the faint hum of turbines. Naira kept her arms folded, eyes fixed on the transparent floor as the city layers rose beneath them. Rows of neon, mirrored corridors, the curved glass of Irisa Crown's habitat rings. Tyler stood beside her, expression steady, gaze forward. His hand rested on the tool bag hanging from his shoulder. For the first time, Naira noticed the faint scars along his forearm, pale lines almost surgical. You were in rescue work before this, she said quietly. He glanced at her. Civic Rescue Corps. Flood Recovery Unit. Why'd you stop? Too many bodies. Not enough survivors. She hesitated. So you traded one kind of drowning for another? He gave a short, humorless smile. Something like that. The lift doors opened with a soft chime. His floor smelled faintly of ozone and polished chrome. As they stepped out, a cleaning drone paused to scan Naira. Its sensor light blinked yellow, detecting foreign DNA traces. Before it could log anything, Tyler tapped his wrist beacon. The drone chirped and floated away. Naira froze. You just cleared me? For now, he said. Your genome markers would flag you as hybrid. The registry would mark that as non-permit resident. You'd be out within an hour. She frowned. Why would you risk that? He stopped at the door to his flat and keyed it open. Because I can, he said simply. And because I'm not the kind of man who pretends he didn't see someone in a drain. When they entered, sunlight pooled across the floor in quiet stripes. The place smelled of metal polish and warm bread from a bakery, vending air nearby. The small window overlooked the sea. Naira stood near the balcony, her reflection sharp against the glass. You didn't tell me you live this high up. Company housing, Tyler said, setting down his tools. I'm not rich, just thorough. She glanced around, eyes tracing the order in the room. The labeled drawers, the alignment of utensils, even the towels folded in perfect halves. It wasn't comfort, it was control. You live like someone expecting an inspection, she said. Every day is one. He opened the food unit, pulled out a sealed packet of frozen meat and a jar of black spice mix. You said you wanted real food yesterday. I didn't think you'd remember. I remember practical things. He thawed the meat, strand ox slices, and set them on the hot plate. The room filled with the heavy, rich scent of cooking flesh, a rare smell in the city where most meals were synthetic. She sat at the counter, fingers curling around a cup of cooling coffee. For the first time, she looked almost relaxed. The light hit her skin softly, illuminating the faint freckles along her shoulders. What will you tell the board about me? She asked. Nothing. That's not safe. It's safer than the truth. She studied his face. You don't talk like other humans. Most of them talk too much. He flipped the meat with quiet precision. You were registered in Sector 6, right? Yes. They took my badge when they dismissed me. Then officially, you don't exist anymore. She blinked. That's not how you reassure someone. I'm not reassuring you, he said. I'm explaining why no one's coming. The air between them went still. She looked down at her hands, still trembling faintly from tension, and whispered, "Then I guess I'm really gone." Tyler set the plate in front of her. Not to me. For a moment, she didn't move. Then she reached for a slice, tearing it apart with her fingers. The first bite made her eyes water. The taste was too rich, too real. "You're wasting good meat on a stranger," she said. "I've eaten alone long enough," he replied. They ate quietly. Outside, gull drones wheeled in slow arcs over the sea. The hum of Irisa Crown was constant, but here, it felt far away. Afterward, Tyler sat back in his chair. "You said you were hybrid. Which sides are in ye?" "Mother's," she said softly. "Father was human. Do you remember him?" "No. He left before I was born." Her expression hardened. "That's what humans do. Some of us stay." She looked at him then, eyes meeting his for the first time, without flinching. "Why are you really helping me, Tyler?" He didn't answer right away. "You want the truth?" "I'm asking, aren't I? I saw someone worth saving before anyone else did," he said finally. "And I didn't want to forget that feeling." Her throat tightened, and she turned her face away. "You talk like saving people is a job you can quit. It's not. It's just quieter now." A chime interrupted, the system alert from his wrist beacon. He tapped the screen. "Inspection team request. Vent verification, Sector 9. They logged the repair." Naira stood. "They'll check the report. They'll check the location," he said. "And they'll wonder why an unregistered hybrid's DNA was logged there last night." Her eyes widened. "You said you cleared it." "I cleared the drone," he corrected. "Not the archive. I'll fix it before they dig deeper." "Ow!" "By adding my own sample to the same trace pattern." "You'd risk your record?" He looked up at her, voice steady. "It's just paperwork. Paperwork's easy to rewrite. People aren't." Naira took a slow breath, searching his face for any hint of hesitation. There was none. The quiet resolve there unnerved her more than anger would have. "You really mean that?" she said softly. "I don't say things I don't mean." She sank back into the chair, silent for a long moment. "Then what happens after? When the system forgets I existed, then you decide who you want to be next," he said. She smiled faintly, sad but real. "You make it sound simple." "It isn't," he said, "but it's better than disappearing." The light shifted. Afternoon deepened to orange. For a moment, the sea below caught the sun and reflected it through the glass, painting them both in gold. She watched it quietly, then asked, "You ever regret staying human?" He glanced at her. "What does that mean?" "Humans build cities in the sky and still leave people rotting in alleys. You fix vents and leaks like it matters, but nothing really changes." He didn't answer. She waited, expecting deflection, but his silence wasn't avoidance. It was thought. Finally, he said, "Maybe I just want one thing I fixed to stay fixed." The simplicity of it made her chest ache. She turned back to the window, voice low. "Then fix me if you can." He met her gaze. Already started. Neither smiled. But in the silence that followed, something between them shifted. No longer rescuer and rescued, but two people aware of how fragile and deliberate compassion could be. Outside, the mist nozzles reactivated far below, hissing over the lower sectors. Naira's reflection caught in the glass, her eyes still uncertain, her posture no longer small. And for the first time, Tyler thought maybe he wasn't fixing something broken at all, just helping someone remember what being whole looked like. The next morning broke through Irisa Crown's glass canopy like a clinical dawn, white light, sharp and distant. The sea below looked too calm, like nothing ever happened beneath its surface. Tyler woke before the alarm. He always did. Years of rescue work had trained his body to rise before the world demanded it. He checked the inspection alerts scrolling across his slate. Routine checks, vent readouts, a new message from Central Safety Board marked pending review. He stared at that one a little longer, jaw tight. Naira was still asleep on the small cot near the balcony door, curled beneath the thin cover. The sound of her breathing blended with the hum of the purifier. Her damp hair had dried into soft green waves that brushed the pillow. For a moment, she looked peaceful, something rare on Irisa Crown. Tyler stood by the window, watching the reflection of the city over her sleeping face. Part of him wanted to believe she was safe now, but the truth was simpler. She was only invisible because he had hidden her. When she stirred, the first thing she did was pull the blanket higher, startled. "I'm sorry," she said quietly, realizing where she was. "I didn't mean to stay again." "You were asleep before I could wake you," he said. "You needed rest." She sat up slowly, blinking against the light. "You could have sent me away." "Why didn't you?" "Because I said one day," Tyler answered. And it wasn't over yet. Naira studied him for a moment, searching for sarcasm. There was none. He moved around the kitchen like everything had purpose, pouring water, heating the flatbread, checking the vent readings again. Her voice softened. "Do you always start your mornings like this?" "Everything planned to the minute." "Plans keep me from thinking too much," he said. She smiled faintly. "You'd hate how I used to live." "Maybe." He set 2 cups on the table. "Tell me anyway." She hesitated, then spoke. "My mother worked hydrofilters under the bay decks. She was a Rennie, same as me. No one liked that down there. Too bright, too different. They made her wear cloth over her skin to stop the glow. When she got sick, I took her shifts. The pain never came." She paused, eyes unfocused. "I stayed too long. Then the layoffs came, and I wasn't anyone's problem anymore." Tyler didn't interrupt. He leaned against the counter, listening. "She died in the lower wards," Naira said finally. "She wanted to be cremated over the water. But hybrids don't get sea rights. So I carried her ashes up to a vent shaft and scattered them into the mist cycle. She still circles the city every morning. Somewhere in there, she touches the clean air." Tyler's throat tightened, but he didn't let it show. He spoke quietly. "That's not a bad way to stay in the world." She looked at him, surprised by his tone. "Most people tell me that's illegal. I'm not most people." The silence that followed was full, but not heavy. Then his slate buzzed again. "Central Safety Board, second notice." He opened it, brows furrowing. The message was short. "Anomalous biotrace detected in Sector 9 report. Clarify identity of secondary genome source." Naira saw his face change. "That's about me, isn't it?" "Yes," he said. They noticed the residue. The trace didn't match standard citizen logs. "What happens if they connect it?" "They won't," he said quickly. "I'll handle it." She stepped closer. "Tyler, what does that mean?" "Handle how?" He met her eyes. "It means I'll link it to my own file. Say I was testing a hybrid-compatible filter patch. It's believable. I've done prototype verifications before." "That's falsification," she said. "That's survival," he corrected. Naira's hands clenched around the back of the chair. "You're risking your job for me." "I've risked more for less," he said simply. "Besides, the board doesn't look twice if you sound confident." She was quiet for a while, processing that. "You really don't know when to stop saving people, do you?" "I stop when they start saving themselves." The line hit her harder than she expected. For a second, her throat locked. "Then teach me how," she said softly. He turned to the table, loading a small portable scanner. "Start by coming with me today. There's an equipment check on the outer rim. No cameras there." "Why?" "So you can walk without hiding." The words stayed in her head as they rode the lift again, descending past the public decks. The outer rim was quieter, industrial zones and inspection platforms. Salt wind swept through the open gaps in the structure. Naira followed him across a walkway lined with broken lights and maintenance drones. "This part of the city feels unfinished," she said. "It is," he replied. "They keep building outward, never fixing what's behind them." He knelt to inspect a cracked pipe valve. She crouched nearby, curious. "You fix all this yourself?" "Mostly. Doesn't anyone help?" He looked at her over his shoulder. "People stop helping when the system tells them it's someone else's problem." She smiled faintly. "Sounds familiar." He finished sealing the pipe, stood, and stretched his arm, the one with the faded scars. She noticed the slight stiffness. "You hurt your arm in the rescue corps?" He nodded. "Underwater collapse, 6 years ago. Pulled 3 out alive. Lost the 4th. That's when I realized fixing structures is easier than fixing people." She looked at him for a long time. "But you still try." "Old habit." The wind pushed strands of her hair across her face. She didn't move them right away. She was studying him, not as a savior now, but as someone she couldn't quite define, too guarded to be kind by accident, too steady to be cruel. When they finished, they walked the perimeter toward the sea-facing side of the city. The view opened wide, turquoise water glimmering under the high sun, drones tracing slow arcs in the distance. Naira stopped near the railing. "This is the first time I've seen the ocean from above," she said quietly. "You've lived under it your whole life. Not like this." She leaned forward, hair catching the light. "It's beautiful. It looks clean from here." Tyler stood beside her, hands on the rail. "Everything does from a distance." She turned toward him, her voice barely above the wind. "You really think we can just start over? Like I was never there, never nothing?" "You were never nothing," he said firmly. "And yes, the board doesn't track ghosts." Her eyes softened. She reached out, almost touching his hand on the rail, then stopped herself. "And if they find us?" He looked at her, a faint, calm defiance in his voice. "Then they'll find me first." She stared at him for a long second, her pulse rising at the quiet conviction in his tone. "You make it sound easy to trust you." "I don't want you to trust me," he said. "I want you to decide if I'm worth trusting." The honesty in his voice caught her off guard. The wind carried salt into her lungs. She nodded, slow but certain. "Then I decide yes." He exhaled, something in his shoulders easing for the first time since the day began. As they headed back, the city lights shimmered faintly under the rising mist. Naira walked beside him with her chin high, no longer flinching at every passing drone. She wasn't invisible anymore, and maybe that was the real danger. That evening, when they reached the sky flat, she set his jacket neatly on the chair. "I want to earn my place here," she said, "not borrow it." He looked at her, understanding the weight behind that sentence. "Then start tomorrow. The Pearl Halo Bazaar opens early. You'll need things that fit." "Things that fit," she repeated with a small, almost playful tone. "That's new." For the first time, he smiled, tired, real, unguarded. "You'll get used to it." As the night deepened, the city's glow faded into the sea haze. Somewhere below, the mist vents purged again, cleansing the lower sectors. But this time, neither of them flinched at the sound. For the first time since the alley, Naira didn't feel like she was waiting for someone to rescue her. And for the first time in years, Tyler felt like he wasn't alone in trying. The following morning, Irisa Crown woke under a slow, gold haze drifting over the sea. The city's mist towers released thin white trails into the air, catching the early light like breath. Inside Tyler's flat, everything was quiet except for the low hum of the air filter and the sound of metal utensils against ceramic. Naira stood barefoot near the window, wrapped in one of Tyler's shirts that reached her thighs. She looked out over the turquoise horizon, steam from the purifier rising beside her face. She didn't say anything for a while. The reflection on the glass made her skin look almost translucent, her bioluminescent freckles glowing faintly in the morning dim. Tyler turned from the counter with 2 plates, flatbread, grilled Stranock strips, and a few pieces of Zyron fruit. "Eat before it gets cold," he said, setting one plate near her. She hesitated. "You cook like it's a duty." "It's a habit," he said. "Rescue shifts ran long. If you didn't cook for yourself, you didn't eat." She picked up a slice of meat and took a slow bite. The salt hit first, then the spice. Her throat tightened at the taste. "I forgot what real food was like," she said. Synthetic rations never tasted like anything. Tyler watched her quietly. He had seen hunger before, but this was something else, like she was trying to remember what living felt like. When they finished, he said, "We'll go to the bazaar today. You need clothes that belong to you. I'll only slow you down." "I'm not in a hurry," he said, putting on his matte jacket. "Besides, you'll be safer if you don't look like you were pulled from a drain." That line landed harder than he meant it to. She looked at him, a trace of old pain behind her eyes, but she didn't argue. They left just after the 9th bell. The glass walks were busier than usual. Vendors shouted prices across the upper corridors. The air smelled of salt, fruit oils, and machine lubricant. Tyler walked ahead through the crowd, steady, scanning every reflection in the chrome panels. Naira kept half a step behind, trying not to shrink when people's gazes lingered too long on her teal skin. At a stall lined with soft fabrics, A merchant held up a sand-white half-skirt with a side tie. Light and breathable, the woman said, eyeing Naira curiously. Looks like it'd fit her. Naira reached for it, fingers brushing the fabric. How much? 40 credits. Tyler paid before Naira could protest. Wrap it, he said simply. She frowned as they walked away. You didn't have to do that. He gave her a look that wasn't quite a smile. You keep saying that like I don't know. A few stalls later, she stopped at a rack of storm veils. Thin scarves designed for mist protection. One shimmered green when the light hit it. She ran her hand over it. This one, she whispered. Take it, Tyler said. She hesitated. You sure you can afford generosity? I can afford quiet mornings, he said. And buying this will make you less noticeable. That's your reason? She asked. He met her eyes. Part of it. They continued through the Pearl Halo's narrow corridors, past the vendors selling dried Larn fruit, ion filters, and jewelry made from sea glass. The whispers followed them. That's the hybrid from Sector 9. Didn't they find her with a human? Naira's shoulders tensed. They're talking about me. I know, he said. Ignore them. That's easy for you. You don't glow. He looked at her directly, voice low. Then let them see you glow. They can't shame what you don't hide. She didn't respond, but something shifted in her face, a spark of quiet defiance. She adjusted the storm veil over her hair, walked straighter, chin up. The light caught the edge of her cheekbones and made the freckles along her collarbone flicker brighter. People still stared, but she didn't look away anymore. They stopped at a food stall. The cook served roasted scath fish with steamed kesh figs and poured Larn nectar into small cups. Naira ate slowly, glancing at Tyler. You don't seem afraid of being seen with me, she said. He shrugged. Fear's not useful. That's not what I asked. He set his cup down. I don't care what they see. I care what they understand. And what's that supposed to mean? That I don't do this to make a point. I do it because I choose to. She looked away, swallowing hard. No one had ever said that to her before. I choose to. It was a small sentence, but it shook something loose inside her. When they finished, they walked along the west glass walk overlooking the sea. The air shimmered with heat from the vent lines below. She held the veil to her face, hair blowing against the glass. You live like everything is already decided, she said softly. I live like it could end any minute. Tyler turned toward her, then start living like it won't. Before she could respond, a group of the same teenagers from the alley appeared at the far end of the walkway. They recognized her instantly. One laughed and whispered something cruel. The others joined in. Tyler's steps slowed. Stay behind me. No, she said, surprising herself. I won't hide this time. He studied her for a moment, then nodded once. Then we stand. The boys stopped a few meters away. Didn't think we'd see the trash queen again, one sneered. Got yourself a rescuer now. Naira's jaw tightened, but she stayed still. Tyler's voice cut through the noise, calm but sharp. You dumped garbage on a woman because you were bored. You're going to clean it up now. What? The leader said, confused. Tyler pulled a clear disposal bag from his jacket pocket and handed it to the boy. Every wrapper, every bottle, every scrap from this walkway. You'll clean it. All of you. The teens looked at each other, waiting for him to back down. He didn't blink. After a long pause, one boy bent, then another. Soon, the walkway was quiet except for the sound of plastic being gathered. A few pedestrians stopped to watch. When they were done, Tyler tied the bag shut and hung it on the public waste hook. That's how you fix what you break, he said. Go home. They left without another word. Naira stood frozen for a moment, pulse pounding. You didn't yell, she said. You just made them do it. Noise doesn't make people listen, he said. Control does. She turned toward him, eyes wet. No one's ever defended me without turning it into a fight. He looked at her, the faintest trace of a smile in his eyes. Maybe it was never about fighting. For a few seconds, neither of them moved. The sea wind whipped her veil, his hair, the edges of his jacket. The city noise seemed to fade beneath it. That night, when they returned to his flat, the silence between them felt different, closer, heavier, but not awkward. She stood near the doorway, fingers brushing the edge of the counter. Tyler, she said quietly, why do you keep helping me? He answered without looking up. Because I don't want the world to decide who you get to be. Her voice trembled. And what if I decide it's you? That made him stop. He looked at her, the weight of everything between them hanging in the air. Fear, gratitude, something new neither wanted to name yet. He stepped closer, not touching her, just near enough that she could feel the warmth from his skin. Then decide, he said. She didn't answer in words. Instead, she reached up and undid the knot of the storm veil, letting it fall. The air felt thick, electric. They didn't speak again that night. They didn't need to. The city outside kept humming. The sea kept breathing. And inside a quiet apartment high above the mist, two people stood at the edge of something that no longer felt like survival. It felt like living. The light from the ocean spilled across the floor, pale and steady, touching everything in the room. Naira sat near the balcony rail, hair tangled from sleep, his shirt draped loosely over her shoulders. The air between them carried last night's silence, neither awkward nor rushed, just the kind that came after truth. Tyler leaned against the counter, watching the morning mist sweep through the lower decks. His mind was clear but heavy. He knew what last night meant, what had changed. He had crossed a line, not of duty, but of distance. And now, there was no going back to being the quiet man who simply helped strangers. Naira turned from the balcony, bare feet padding softly across the floor. "You're up early again," she said. "Old habit. You keep a lot of those." He looked at her, then nodded toward the food unit. "There's fruit and bread. Eat before we go." She frowned. "Go where?" "Registry office," he said. "We need to close the anomaly file. It's safer if you're officially recorded as under my supervision." Her body stiffened. "You mean like ownership?" "No," he said quickly, stepping closer. "Not that. There's a loophole in the system. The safety board allows care extensions for field dependents. It means you can move through public decks without alerts. And you're willing to say I'm one of those?" "I already did," he said. For a long moment, she just stared at him. "Tyler, that's a permanent entry." "I know." She moved closer, voice low. "You're marking your life with mine." He met her eyes. "Then let's make it worth something." The way he said it, steady, not romantic, just certain, made her chest tighten. She looked away before her voice betrayed her. "You think they'll believe it? They'll believe what looks normal." That day, they took the elevator to the registry tower. The building was a column of mirrored glass rising through the center of Irisa Crown. Inside, lines of citizens waited under white lights. Machines hummed softly behind reinforced glass. Naira wore the sand-colored half-skirt and storm veil he had bought her, the fabric light and clean. Even so, eyes followed her as she walked. She felt it, the same old burn of being seen for what she wasn't supposed to be. Tyler stood beside her, steady as always. When they reached the console, the clerk scanned his ID. "Field Supervisor Tyler Vale," the machine voice said. "Pending dependent authorization." "Confirming," he replied. "Name of dependent?" He glanced at Naira. She swallowed hard. "Naira," she said. "Just Naira." The system hummed, lights flickering. A soft chime confirmed the entry. Pair status registered. Temporary care bond, Civic Safety Code 19. Duration, indefinite pending supervisor review. That word bond hung between them. The clerk barely looked up. It was just another file to him, but to her, it felt like something that could finally anchor her to this place. When they left, she said quietly, "Does it feel strange, having someone else's name under yours?" "It feels right," he said. They walked through the plaza, where mirrored walkways overlooked the ocean. The air was cooler here. Naira stopped by the railing, staring down at the water far below. "I used to think if I ever got out of the lower decks, I'd disappear into the clean air. Not stay here, not stand in the open." "You're standing," he said. She smiled faintly. "Because you're next to me." He didn't answer, but she saw the smallest flicker of emotion cross his face. Relief, pride, something softer than either. Back at the flat, she moved around more easily now, barefoot, unafraid of making noise. She cleaned the balcony rail, rearranged the small shelf by the window, left her storm veil hanging beside his jacket. It looked ordinary, but the space already felt different, less like his and more like theirs. He came in from the balcony, wiping his hands with a towel. "You're changing things." "I'm fixing ugly corners," she said, echoing her words from before. You said that was allowed. It is. She turned to him. So what happens now? You've given me a name, a place, protection. You could have stopped days ago. He looked at her for a long time. Maybe I didn't want to. She didn't speak. She just watched him. This man who lived by rules, who fixed things quietly, who had decided to share his order with her chaos. She saw how steady his hands were, how calm his breathing stayed even when she stepped closer, close enough to feel the heat radiating from him. Tyler, she said softly, you don't owe me anything. I know, he said. That's why it matters. Her breath caught. For the first time, she didn't look away. She reached up, fingers brushing the scar on his forearm. You should have let it heal better. It did. It didn't, she said. He caught her wrist, not harshly, just firm enough to stop her trembling. Some things don't need to look healed to be whole. Her eyes filled with something unsteady. Fear, want, gratitude. I don't know how to live like this, she whispered, without waiting for it to end. Then we start small, he said, one day at a time. Outside, the sky deepened to violet. The sea reflected the first traces of dusk. She rested her head against his chest, feeling his heartbeat steady and unhurried. For the first time, the rhythm didn't make her nervous. Later, she lit one of the small wall lamps. The light fell on the shelf where the registry slip sat. 2 names, 1 line, no expiration date. She traced it with her fingers, quiet and thoughtful. In that moment, Naira realized she wasn't the same woman who had crouched in an alley waiting for the city to forget her. The world hadn't changed, but her place in it had. And as Tyler watched her from across the room, he knew something had shifted in him too. He wasn't just protecting her anymore. He was choosing her every hour in small, deliberate ways the world would never see. Neither said it out loud, but both knew whatever began as rescue was no longer that. It was something closer to belonging. Night settled over Irisa Crown with its usual rhythm, quiet, sterile, humming beneath the ocean light. From the balcony, the sea glowed faintly under the city's reflection, broken only by the motion of passing drones. Inside, the flat felt warmer than usual. The windows were fogged, the purifier hummed softer, the air thick with the scent of roasted meat and salt. Naira was cutting fruit at the counter, the storm veil now tied loosely around her waist. Her skin shimmered under the light, clean, calm, alive. Every movement was careful, deliberate. For the first time since Tyler had met her, she wasn't guarding herself. She looked like someone who had chosen to exist again. Tyler finished checking the vent reports and powered down his slate. All clear, he said quietly. Your record's invisible now. No trace. She looked over her shoulder. So, to the system, I'm no one again. He stepped closer. No, to the system, you're mine. Her hands paused. The sound of the knife against the cutting board stopped. That sounds dangerous, she said. It is, he replied, but it's also safe. Naira turned, leaning against the counter. I don't understand you, Tyler. You live by rules, yet you keep breaking them for me. He met her gaze. Maybe you're the first rule worth breaking. That made her laugh softly, though her eyes glistened. You say things like that too easily. I mean them, he said simply. They ate on the balcony, side by side, watching the lights ripple across the sea. Naira bit into the Zyron fruit, its juice bright against her lips. She wiped it with her wrist and said, when I was in the lower decks, I used to think about this, sitting somewhere clean, no one shouting, no one looking, just quiet. But I didn't think it would ever happen. He didn't answer immediately. Then let's make sure it keeps happening, he said at last. She looked at him, realizing he never talked in grand promises. Everything he said sounded practical, achievable. That was what made it real. After dinner, she cleaned the plates without asking. When she turned to place them away, he was standing near the window, looking at the registry slip still pinned to the wall. You never took that down, he said. She joined him. It reminds me that I belong somewhere, she said softly. Even if it's temporary. His eyes shifted to hers. It doesn't have to be. Her breath caught. What do you mean? He gestured toward the public monitor on the far wall. Every district has a pair hearth terminal. If 2 people register a shared breath pledge, it becomes permanent. No supervisor, no expiration. It's not marriage, but it's recognized. Naira's voice lowered. Why are you telling me this? Because I don't want the system to decide when this ends. The silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable. It was weight. She looked out through the glass wall, where the reflection of both their faces floated against the blue light of the city. For the first time, she didn't look like a woman waiting to be hidden. She looked certain. When? She asked. He exhaled slowly. Tomorrow. If you want it. I do, she said without hesitation. The next morning, the Pear Hearth kiosk was nearly empty. It stood at the edge of the district gardens, a simple white column with a digital panel. When they stepped up, a thin mist drifted through the vents, carrying the faint smell of ozone and citrus. Place your hands on the scanner, the system voice instructed. Breathe together to confirm identity and consent. Naira's pulse quickened. She met Tyler's eyes. You sure this is what you want? He nodded. I wouldn't be here if I wasn't. They pressed their palms against the cold glass. The scanner warmed slowly, glowing blue. She inhaled, and he matched her rhythm. Their breaths synced, steady and slow. The screen flashed once. Shared breath confirmed. Pair bond registered. Naira plus Tyler Vale. For a moment, the hum of the city faded. The kiosk light reflected across their faces, bright and clean. Naira's eyes filled, not from fear this time, but relief. As they stepped away, she turned toward him. You just broke every rule you ever lived by. He smiled faintly. Maybe I needed new ones. They spent the rest of the afternoon walking the market again, this time without the stares feeling like knives. People still looked, but something had changed. The label hybrid didn't fit her anymore. She walked taller, her chin up, her storm veil catching the light with each step. At a food stall, they shared grilled pike and cold lar nectar. She leaned her head on his shoulder, eyes half closed. Do you think people like us get to stay happy? He brushed her hair back from her face. We make our own rules. That's how we stay happy. Later that evening, back at the flat, the city's lights reflected off the water like stars trapped below. Naira stood by the open balcony, wind pulling gently at her hair. She looked back at him, eyes shining. Do you ever think about what comes next? He walked to her, standing close enough that his hand brushed her arm. Next is tomorrow, he said, and tomorrow we live. She smiled softly, turning her face toward him. Then tomorrow starts now. He kissed her, slow, deliberate grounding. No urgency, no rescue this time. Just the quiet certainty of two people who had already decided where they belonged. When the night deepened and the city dimmed to its sleep cycle, she curled against him on the small cot. The registry slip glowed faintly on the wall, their names side by side. Outside, the mist cycle began again, cleansing the streets below. But for the first time, Naira didn't feel erased by it. The world could wash itself clean as many times as it wanted. She had a name now, a home, and a man who had chosen her in front of the city that once called her Vermin. The hum of Irisa Crown continued far below, indifferent as always. But high above, in one quiet apartment that smelled of salt and fruit and metal, two lies had finally stopped drifting. They had found something lasting, simple, real, and completely human. The next dawn came softly over Irisa Crown. The misters released their first wave, scattering silver droplets across the skywalks, and the faint light of the sea rose through the city's glass base. Inside the flat, the morning silence was warm, filled only with the slow rhythm of breathing and the distant hum of turbines. Naira woke first. For a long moment, she just watched Tyler sleeping beside her, still calm. The corners of his mouth relaxed in a way she had never seen before. She'd grown used to people twitching awake, afraid of alarms or voices. But he slept like someone who trusted his own walls. That trust somehow had become hers. She slipped out of bed quietly, wrapped the storm veil around her waist, and stepped onto the balcony. The air was damp and cold, but the view stopped her breath. The ocean stretched endlessly below, reflecting the city's white underlight. The same world that once drowned her in contempt now looked open, almost forgiving. She spoke softly, more to herself than to him. "Mother, I made it out." Behind her, Tyler stirred. He stood at the doorway, hair unkempt, a trace of sleep still in his voice. "You talking to someone out there?" She smiled faintly. To her, she's still in the mist. He came beside her, resting his arms on the railing. "Then she can see what you built." "I didn't build it," she said, turning to face him. "You did." "No," he corrected. "I just fixed a few broken parts. You built the rest." She didn't argue. Instead, she looked up at him with quiet certainty. "We should leave the flat for a day. Go to the docks. I want to see the sea up close." "You'll freeze," he said, half smiling. "I've been cold before," she said. "This time it'll be by choice." Later that morning, they boarded a maintenance ferry heading toward the lower ring. Few civilians went that far down. The air smelled like brine and metal, and the sounds of turbines were louder. Naira leaned against the railing, eyes wide. "I used to hear the ocean, but never saw it this close. It feels alive." "It is alive," he said. "The city just forgets that." She looked over her shoulder at him. "You think it forgets everything?" "People forget what they want to ignore," Tyler said. "Cities just make it easier." At the dock, the air felt raw and wet. Naira crouched near the water's edge, dipping her fingers into the foam that broke against the pylons. The cold bit her skin, but she didn't pull away. "It doesn't burn," she said softly. "It used to sting from the vents runoff. But here it feels clean." Tyler stood behind her, his reflection stretching over the water. "It's clean because no one controls it here." She rose, turning to him with a quiet grin. "That's how you sound lately, like someone who stopped following orders." "Maybe I did." They walked along the dock until the sun shifted higher, painting the water in soft silver. Vendors shouted from their boats, selling grilled fish, salt tea, and dried fruit. Naira stopped at one stand, traded a few credits for a steaming cup of Vermin root tea, and handed it to Tyler. "Drink. You look like someone who hasn't had a day off in years." He took the cup, raising an eyebrow. "And you look like someone who just took one." She laughed quietly, and the sound carried over the water. By midday, they found a quiet spot near the edge of the platform. She sat beside him, feet dangling over the sea. "When I was small," she said, "I thought if I ever escaped the lower decks, I'd go somewhere no one could find me. I didn't think I'd end up in a place where someone wanted to." He turned to her. "You're not hiding anymore." "I know." Her voice softened. "That's what scares me." He reached over, brushing a damp strand of hair from her face. "Then you're finally living. Fear means you care if it's taken from you." Her eyes lingered on his. "You sound like someone who's done this before." He shook his head. "Never like this." The day passed slowly. They stayed until the lights of the upper city shimmered across the water, until the mist towers began their evening purge. As they rowed the ferry back, the sea stretched beneath them like a moving mirror. Naira leaned her head against his shoulder, and he rested his hand over hers. When they reached the sky flat, the city's night cycle had already begun. The lights dimmed to soft blue, and a faint drizzle brushed the windows. She stepped inside, unwrapping her storm veil, leaving it over the chair. Tyler watched her. "You're quiet." "I'm thinking." "About what?" "About how fast everything changed." She looked up, her voice trembling slightly. "A week ago, I was nothing. Now I'm someone's pair bond. I wake up warm. I eat food that tastes real. I don't have to hide when people look at me. It's strange." He moved closer. "Strange isn't bad." "No," she said, "but it feels fragile. Like if we blink, it disappears." He placed his hand gently on her neck, thumb brushing her pulse. "Then we keep our eyes open." She smiled weakly. "That's your answer for everything, isn't it?" "It works." That night, they sat by the window again, watching the rain drift across the city's glow. Naira traced small circles on the glass with her fingertip. "What if the world starts asking questions again?" she whispered. "What if someone notices the bond, the file, the name?" Tyler didn't hesitate. "Then they'll learn what it means to see us." She turned toward him, searching his face for fear and finding none. That steadiness anchored her. "And if I told you I might be pregnant?" He blinked, caught between surprise and realization. "You think you are?" She nodded, voice quiet but steady. "I'm late. My skin patterns changed color. It's early, but I know." He stepped closer, one hand reaching for hers, the other moving instinctively to her stomach. "You're sure?" She nodded again, eyes glassy. Yes. Tyler took a long breath, then smiled. A small, unguarded smile she'd never seen before. Then we billed for 3. She exhaled, half laugh, half tear. That's simple. That real, he said. He guided her to the couch, and they sat there for a long time, neither speaking, both just letting the thoughts settle. A small life, proof that everything they had risked was alive now, growing. Outside, the mist cycles started again. The city hummed its endless routine, purging, cleaning, forgetting. But inside the small sky flat, something had broken that rhythm. Naira rested her head against his shoulder. If it's a girl, I'll name her after my mother. He nodded, fingers threading through her hair. And if it's a boy, she smiled faintly. Then you can choose. You've earned that. The purifier clicked softly. The scent of rain mixed with salt from the sea. Tyler kissed the side of her head, his voice low and certain. We're not ghosts anymore, Naira. Let them see what they threw away. She looked up at him, eyes shining through the half-light. They will, she said. And this time, they'll remember. Beyond the window, Irisa crown floated in its quiet perfection, unaware that in one small room high above its clean corridors, 2 forgotten souls had rewritten its order. Their story didn't end with escape. It ended with existence. Not hidden, not erased, just living fully, defiantly together.